Opposition Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and my question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, you promised Territorians open and accountable government. You also promised Territorians that projects will have to meet our robust environmental standards. Since coming to government, you have secretly released the Territory Coordinator consultation paper that will give you and your ministers the power to sidestep any laws, including environmental laws, to avoid scrutiny. And Madam Speaker, I seek leave to table the consultation paper by the government.
Is leave granted?
Chief Minister, when are you going to come clean with Territorians that you are removing safeguards that you promised to keep?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'm very pleased that the Opposition Leader has had an opportunity to recognise that we are delivering on our commitments to reduce red tape for Territory businesses, on rebuilding our economy, an economy that was trashed by Labor over 8 years, where they not only blew our debt into a near $12 billion liability for Territorians, but also failed to grow our economy and recognise our true economic potential. And it is no secret, Madam Speaker, that we took to the election a very clear plan around reducing crime, rebuilding the economy and restoring our lifestyle. And the jewel in that crown of rebuilding the Territory's economy is the Territory Coordinator piece. And as you rightly noted, as an open and transparent government would, we've actually put out a consultation paper, an exposure draft of the Territory Coordinator legislation to key different sectors in the community, in the business sector, to get feedback and test with them whether or not that legislation has hit the mark. So we're looking forward to getting all of that feedback from that consultation paper, which we've transparently gone out with, to get the feedback because it needs to hit the mark. This is absolutely about reducing timeframes. It's about making sure that projects are fought for, not just facilitated. We need to be going full steam ahead when it comes to private sector investment. Because as you will see, and is plain for anyone, you don't have to know much about economics to know that private sector in the investment in the Territory is at all-time lows. And while the government has an important role to play in building public infrastructure, and we're very, very proud of what we will achieve into the future. But without the private sector investment, our economy will not grow. And that's why measures like reducing payroll tax are really, really important part of this story as well. And between incentives like lifting the payroll tax free threshold from 1.5 million to 2.5 million, meaning another 200 businesses don't pay payroll tax.
What's your point of order, Opposition Leader?
Standing Order 110, relevance. The question was clearly about what safeguards are going to be removed by the Chief Minister.
Chief Minister has the call.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And again, this comes as no surprise to anyone. The Territory Coordinator is about fast-tracking and facilitating investment. Where there's duplication in approvals processes, we need to unblock those. We need to streamline this process. And so we're very, very proud and excited about the Territory Coordinator legislation, and that will come back to the Parliament after it's been through a public consultation phase. And it's going to be a flagship signature piece of rebuilding the Territory's economy. We're incredibly proud of that and look forward to all of the feedback from all of the stakeholders on the bill.
Member for Drysdale.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, our new CLP government took a plan to the election to rebuild our Territory economy and to restore the Territory lifestyle. The plan included our Homegrown Territory program to stimulate building and construction and help Territorians achieve the dream of owning their own home. Chief Minister, can you please update the Assembly on the CLP's Homegrown Territory program and how this program is working for Territorians, as well as helping to attract new residents from interstate?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Member for Drysdale. And of course, this is another signature deliverable of a CLP government getting on with the job and taking action. That's what we promised Territorians we would do. I told Territorians, judge us on our actions. Let us deliver for you, and you can judge us on whether or not we stuck to and came through with the commitments we promised you. And that's exactly what's happened in this 2 weeks of Parliament with our Reducing Crime package, and it's exactly what's happened with our homegrown Territory housing package. And this scheme is so exciting, and it's already delivering enormous results for our economy. We know, and I know you know, Member for Drysdale, that people are facing cost of living pressures out there. And so in developing this scheme, we wanted it to have the broadest possible impact and help the most number of people. So not only did we tailor a scheme that supported people who wanted to buy existing homes, build new homes, it also supports people who've already owned a home or who currently own a home to build a new home, adding stock to our market, increasing construction stimulus and giving people that dream, delivering on their aspiration to own their own home, keeping them here for the long haul, letting them put down roots here in the Territory. We also expanded it as far as possible to not just include Australian citizens, but permanent residents. And so we're very, very exciting. This was launched on the 1st of October, just a few weeks into our government, and has been going for 24 days, Madam Speaker. And in 24 days, I am so proud to report to the Parliament and to the people of the Northern Territory that the taxpayers' dollars we've used, their money, our hard-working Territorians, their taxpayers' dollars, we've spent about $1.68 million of their money to turn around about $25 million into our economy. And so when we talk about a return on investment, this is a fantastic scheme, because not only are we supporting people through a cost of living crisis where that $50,000, $30,000 or $10,000 can go towards their deposit, something that's incredibly hard to save up for. We have seen 4 applications for the first homes grants of $50,000, 42 applications for the Fresh Start grants of $30,000, and 22 applications for the $10,000 grant for existing properties, spinning money through our economy, keeping people here, and that's just 24 days into the scheme. We are really excited about what the future of this looks like, and we want to continue to target interstate. We know it's even tougher to get into home ownership in the big states, and we say to those people living in Victoria or New South Wales or Queensland, come to the Northern Territory, build your dream home here, build your dream life here, be part of rebuilding the Territory together.
Member for Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question's for the Minister for Housing. I draw the Minister and the Chamber's attention to a research study released today, published in the Australian and New Zealand Journal of Psychiatry, which showed that there is a rise in suicidal behaviours among young people linked to hotter temperatures. This study builds on work done by Curtin University and Sydney University, which found increased suicide and mental health risks with high heat anomalies. We know that here in the NT temperatures are rising, and we know that our suicide rates are the highest in the country. We also know that housing conditions and energy security are key vulnerabilities. My understanding is that the NT Department of Housing does not supply air conditioning in dwellings and passes the responsibility of installing air conditioning onto their tenants. Can you please advise how this will be addressed as a matter of immediate public health concern, and in particular, will the NT Department of Housing provide affordable air conditioning options to our vulnerable populations? Thank you.
Minister for Housing.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member for Johnson for this important question. Firstly, I do just want to send a shout out to all of the department staff that are out and about doing a fantastic work, not only in urban areas, not only in Darwin, Katherine, Tennant Creek or Alice Springs, but we've got staff out and about working in the regions as well. Now, the issue of air conditioning has been an ongoing issue for many, many years, and those that are a little bit unsure, what we've seen over the last 8 years is the Labor government has had plenty of opportunities to change housing in the bush. But what we've seen from the Labor government over many, many years is a failure right across the board. And it's not just in regard to air conditioning. What I've been seeing right across the board is a number of projects that have been ignored by the Labor government. Member for Johnson, just in my electorate alone, there was an opportunity for housing the housing minister under the former Labor government to free up 51 houses just in Tennant Creek. They had 8 years to do that, but failed to free up those houses. They've had opportunities to build new staff housing in Tennant Creek, free up housing from Braddag, but also deliver social and affordable housing in Tennant Creek, 22 new houses, but under the regional deal, simply failed to deliver. When it comes to air conditioning, Member for Johnson, this has been an ongoing issue. In fact, many residents have spoken to me about that, but at the moment, certainly in urban areas, there's been many different approaches to me over many years around air conditioning in those particular areas. One of the things that has been happening in urban areas and out in the bush is that the former government has been, in some cases, delivering what we call the evaporative model of air conditioning. And in fact, I can recall, Madam Speaker, that probably about 18 months ago, I did go to a place called Alparulan, which is Lake Nash, where the Labor government installed some evaporative air conditioning there. But what they did straight after that is that they worked out that they'd made a mistake, took it down and provided no replacement air conditioning there for the people living there. So, Member for Johnston, there's a lot of work to be done in housing. We've been left with an absolute mess by the Labor government. When it comes to air conditioning, what I'll be doing is working with the department.
Minister. Do you have a point of order, Member for Johnston?
Member for Johnson, there's a lot of work to be
Minister.
done. I'll be working with the department to determine what's the best way of delivering cooler air conditioning in the remote areas.
Member for Blaine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Infrastructure and Logistics. Minister, our rural and regional residents, businesses and tourists rely on the Milk Run flights to provide access to Katherine, Tennant Creek and Alice Springs. They've been in operation for many years and provide vital alternatives to what can be very long and tiring road journeys. Minister, can you outline to the Assembly how these flights are operated, how they are funded, and what the CLP government is doing to ensure these flights can continue to operate into the future?
Minister for Infrastructure and Logistics.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Blaine for this very important question. And I believe, Madam Speaker, there's probably a lot of members in this chamber who have used the Milk Run over the years. And for those who don't know, the Milk Run flies between Darwin, Katherine, Tennant Creek and Alice Springs, and it's operated by Air North. And there's a number of people who use that service. I believe it's over 6,000 seats per month, if memory serves me correctly. But this service, Madam Speaker, is a crucial lifeline to the regions of the Northern Territory and connecting those smaller centres. And of course, this ensures that people in those remote areas have access to essential services like healthcare, education and other supports that many people in the major centres actually take for granted. It also plays a key role, Madam Speaker, in supporting industries that are vital to the Territory's economy. I know that the mining sector, agricultural sector and tourism businesses regularly use the services of the Milk Run. But, Madam Speaker, incredibly, in the 24-25 budget, Labor has failed to allocate any funding to this vital service beyond the next 8 months. So we've come into government, Madam Speaker, we've looked at the books and looked at the contracts that are coming up. There is no budget for the Milk Run in the next 8 months when that service ends. So here is another black hole that the CLP is going to have to deal with. Here is another piece of work that Labor have left the CLP with. They have not bothered to fund the Milk Run past the existing contract in their budget. Well, member for Barkly, I'll tell you what, you may have to rack up some miles in your car, and certainly for the member for Katherine may have to drive more often than being able to fly. But this is what we're seeing all too often, Madam Speaker. We're seeing gaps in the forward budget. And this is how the Labor government made their forward estimates look good, by not funding projects past a certain date. That's why they were able to project surpluses, Madam Speaker, because they weren't funding things past certain dates, which made their surpluses look great. But then what happens, of course, when we get to that budget time, then we have to come out and fund it. So instead of a surplus, we start to see a deficit again. But, Madam Speaker, our government will be working closely with Air North. We'll be working closely with that contractor to make sure that we're able to provide those appropriate services for those people in those communities that rely on the milk run to be able to travel throughout the Northern Territory, rather than have to drive those all too long distances where fatigue is a factor, and of course that can increase the issues around accidents. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Daly.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, you committed to Territorians that you would be transparent and accountable. I note you stated in your answer to the Leader of the Opposition it is open for the public in terms of the Territory Coordinator consultation paper. Chief Minister, it is not open to the public, it is only open to a select group of stakeholders. Why have you only released your Territory Coordinator consultation paper to a small number of hand-picked stakeholders and property developers, denying all Territorians the opportunity to have their say?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'm thrilled at the opportunity to talk more about our plan for the Territory Coordinator and its critical role in rebuilding the economy. Let me explain this to you very, very clearly, Member for Daly and for the opposition. 8.5 weeks ago, we had a Northern Territory-wide election. And for about 5 or 6 years, the CLP's policy has been to deliver a Territory Coordinator if we were to win government. So this policy has not only been fleshed out at the 2020 election and stood with us for 4 years in the last term, but we took it to the last election just 8.5 weeks ago. And Territorians resoundingly voted for the CLP to deliver on reducing crime and deliver on rebuilding our economy. Now, in fulfilment of some of our commitments around reducing crime, we've delivered our first tranche of legislation in the Parliament, which gives police the immediate powers they need to keep Territorians safe, and that work on crime will continue. There is a long road ahead there. But the next bit that we're tackling and delivering on is the Territory Coordinator legislation. And so to be open and transparent, rather than just bringing the legislation to Parliament later this year, next year, whenever it might be, we put it out to key economic stakeholders for exposure consultation. That's what a transparent government does. Now, Opposition Leader, you've tabled it in the Parliament. Anyone can get their hands on it. If you want to provide feedback, go for your life. Absolutely welcome to it. But make no mistake, we have done targeted consultation on the Territory Coordinator legislation because the feedback we are after is, does it hit the mark to press go on our economy and give industry the green light to have private sector investment here in the Territory? The time for delays and obfuscation of our economic growth and opportunities are over. Under a CLP government, the Territory is open for business. And this morning we had children from Alloa Primary School here in the gallery, and I looked up and I spoke to every single one of them. And I said, we're here to build your future. It's not for us. It's for our kids and their children and the future of the Northern Territory that we have to do this work. And there will be people who vehemently oppose our Territory Coordinator legislation, Madam Speaker. I have no doubt in my mind about that. But that just reinforces to me and reignites the fire in my belly to get it done, because that is exactly why we need it. It literally is the reason we need to do this in the first place, Madam Speaker. So don't worry. Everyone will get their chance. It will be introduced. It will go through the parliamentary process, and we can debate it all day and all night when it comes up, Madam Speaker.
Member for Casuarina. Oh, sorry. Take your seat, Member for Casuarina. Supplementary, Member for Daly.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Chief Minister, can you please provide a list of the hand-picked stakeholders you have sent the consultation paper to?
Chief Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't have the list on me, but from memory there's maybe a dozen organisations on that list. For example, Darwin Major Business Group, I think Master Builders would have been on there. So key industry peak bodies, very typical of who you would provide this type of exposure draft to get their feedback on whether it hits the mark. What we're really focused on and keen to do is make sure it works. This is actually a strength testing exercise to make sure that it's going to hit the mark. And we're excited by the feedback we're going to receive. We're very open to what that looks like, and we are very keen
Chief
to
Minister,
strengthen
take
it if
your
that's
seat.
what's
What's your
required.
point of order, member for Daly?
Standing Order 46, clearly the Chief Minister doesn't have a list of the stakeholders. Will she be willing to put the question on notice and provide that?
Chief Minister.
I'm very happy to provide a list of the stakeholders. There's no secret. You probably have it yourself and you're just wanting to carry on with this charade. But we are very proud of the Territory Coordinator and what it would do to rebuild the Territory.
Member for Casuarina.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Logistics and Infrastructure. Minister, the Howard Springs Quarantine Facility has been subject of much commentary and even more government spending in recent years. This especially occurred after the unprecedented use of wet weather respite last year. The former Labor government tried to tell everyone the damage was fair wear and tear. Although a Labor minister did later reluctantly agree, it was senseless destruction. Minister, can you report to the Assembly about what the true cost of using Howard Springs for wet weather respite was?
Minister for Logistics and Infrastructure.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Casuarina for the question. I think we can all remember last year here in this chamber when we were asking the Labor government, who were in power at the time, about what was taking place at Howard Springs. We'd been hearing all sorts of different stories, and we asked very simple questions of the Labor government: is what was actually happening out there, what were the costs, and what was being done to deal with some of the issues that we seen out at the Howard Springs facility. And that facility was stood up for 2 months, Madam Speaker, between March and April to deal with that flooding event that swept through that northwestern part of the Territory. And it displaced quite a number of people that we had to bring here into town, and the decision was made to put them in Howard Springs. But we always asked about what was the cost, and we heard from 2 Chief Ministers that it was just wear and tear, Madam Speaker. And finally, as the member for Casuarina said, one minister actually came out and was reasonably truthful and says that it was senseless damage. Well, we now have the cost alone of the repair, damage and clean-up, Madam Speaker, was $1.249 million just in repairs and cleaning. And when you break that down, alone there was nearly $500,000 in broken windows. Now, where in anybody's world, Madam Speaker, is $500,000 in broken windows in 2 months, just normal wear and tear? That is just absolute garbage, Madam Speaker. Absolute garbage. But when we look at the overall costs, so there was just the cost for wear and tear, according to Labor, which was actually damage and cleaning, but there was also handyman costs of $277,000, a select tender that went out for nearly $90,000 to replace mattresses. Just the plumbing costs alone, Madam Speaker, to repair the damage done to the plumbing was $174,000. And then replacement of fire extinguishers and smoke alarms that were damaged during that 2-month period. That was $176,000 as well. So overall, though, when you look at the overall cost, when you look at the operational cost to run that facility and stand it up for 2 months, and don't get me wrong, Madam Speaker, we need to look after Territorians during those flood events, but Labor just dropped the can on this and just didn't have that due diligence. The entire costs to run the facility for those 2 months with operational costs was $12.5 million, Madam Speaker. That's what it cost for 2 months to run that centre. And that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money, Madam Speaker, and that's come out of Territorians' pockets, and we'll make sure we're spending Territory money wisely.
Opposition Leader, you're still talking even after the Minister has ceased. Please stop your interjections. Member for Guadja. you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my question is to the Environment Minister. Minister, the Chief Minister has told passionate Territorians who care about the environment to go back to where they came from. The Chief Minister has advocated and proudly said that she will cut funding to the Environmental Defender's Office. Minister, will you guarantee that you won't cut funding to other environmental or advocacy bodies across the Territory out of fear of scrutiny of your government's decisions? Minister for Lands, Planning and Environment.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for their question. Madam Speaker, the Northern Territory Government has a range of rules and regulation as it relates to environmental approvals. Here on this side of the House, we want to ensure that we protect our environment whilst also encouraging development. We have environmental regulation. Environmental regulation and legislation has been developed to regulate greenhouse gas emissions here in the Northern Territory. We also know that there's the Environmental Protection Act from 2019 that requires assessment and approval of proposals that have the potential to cause significant impact on that environment. The Act requires proposals to be assessed and planned, taking into account the impacts of a changing climate. This includes the assessment of greenhouse gas emissions and may lead to the imposition of conditions in environmental approvals. We also have, Madam Speaker, also an emissions reduction strategy. This is really important when we talk about our environment. There's been a draft strategy that's been developed that outlines how the Northern Territory can meet its objectives of economic growth and net zero by 2050, Madam Speaker. So this aligns exactly with what the Chief Minister has been talking about. We want to drive economic growth here in the Northern Territory, but we also want to ensure that we protect our environment. Those strategies in regards to the emissions reduction also include the strategy which builds on the foundation work that's already been completed or underway, as set out in the climate change response. We've also got the Territory has the opportunity to contribute it to decarbonisation elsewhere in Australia and overseas through the export of renewable energy. It was those opposite, Madam Speaker, that brought in the legislation which we all voted on that will assist Sun Cable to be able to export energy overseas. This is once again reducing our reliance on, I guess, what some of those opposite would say, and fossil fuels, and ensure that we can work towards a...
Take your seat, Minister. I do think the Minister is answering the question, but what's your point of order? Member for Gotcha.
Order 110. Minister, will you guarantee that other environmental organisations won't have their funding cut for standing true to the environment and for scrutinising your government?
Minister, you have the call.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And as I was saying, the scrutiny by these environmental groups, and there are many of them, I just want to talk about some of that regulation, because right now in the Northern Territory, if you want to ensure that you have your gas well approved, there is a huge range of environmental requirements put upon you. Back when the government was first established in 1976, all you needed was an ILUA, Madam Speaker. Now you need a huge range of requirements that must be met that go through those environmental protections.
Minister, take your seat. Point of order. What is it, Member for Gwaja?
Very direct question. Will you guarantee funding remains in place for environmental organisations? Yes or no?
Minister,
very simple.
Your call.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. The Chief Minister has made it very clear on a number of occasions. We will not be supporting environmental organisations that seek to use the community as weapons, and that is what is being proven to be occurred in some cases, Madam Speaker. And the EDO is one of those that the Chief Minister has said very loudly and very clearly will not be funded into the future.
Member for Wanguri. Cease your interjections, please. Member for Wanguri. Opposition Leader, you are on a warning. I'm sick of this commentary. Please. Member for Wanguri.
My question is to the Minister for Health. Minister, one of our primary responsibilities as government is to provide quality healthcare services for the Northern Territory residents. Quality. Our doctors, nurses and health professionals work tirelessly to provide a strong and stable healthcare system, which makes up a large part of spending in the Northern Territory. Can you outline to the Assembly what the state of the Territory healthcare budget has been and what you have discovered since coming to the portfolio.
Minister for Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for Wanguri for her question. And she's right, our doctors, nurses and health professionals work tirelessly to provide a strong and stable healthcare system, and I thank all of those staff for the work that they're doing. But in regard to the question, what have I discovered? I've actually discovered quite a bit since I've been in this portfolio, member for Wanguri. The inaction of the Labor government in addressing the unprecedented health overspend is outrageous. Whilst I do appreciate the critical importance of our health delivery and the complexities in this jurisdiction, we are not talking about historical budget pressures. What we are talking about is a $280 million overspend in 1 year. In 1 year, there's a $280 million overspend. 1 year, Madam Speaker, $280 million in overspend. That is more than $5 million per week that Labor has spent on unspecified, unexplored structural gaps between funding and expenditure. The known and recognised Labor trait of spend, spend, spend was alive and well for the entirety of the last 8 years, and this unprecedented and abhorrent budget blowout is one for the record books. Not only did members opposite let the Territory slide into lawlessness by failing to act on the evident crime crisis sweeping our cities, towns and communities, but they opened the public purse to top up critical services. Rather than identifying where money was evaporating, the former Labor government failed to act on putting supports in place at the sunsetting of the Stronger Futures legislation, letting the rivers of grog flow. This put further extreme pressure on our health sector. Labor failed to consider that action needed to be taken to get NT Health back to budget. Once again, Labor's failure to act over the past 8 years has contributed to the budget blowout in health. It will require some heavy lifting to turn this catastrophe around. NT Health have advised that the budget is predicted to overspend again in 24-25. We need to support and protect our esteemed health professionals across all sectors of the health fraternity as they work in a pressured environment and a trusted and respected cohort of professionals. Scrutiny so far has included monitoring financial performance across the NT Health, planned cost reduction measures and addressing structural inequities in Commonwealth funding for healthcare in the Territory. The NT Health budget represents a significant portion of the NT Territory budget and unprecedented blowouts. But just in closing, one additional thing that I have discovered is that the opposition leader was the former health minister.
Opposition leader.
It's a bit hard to be discovering something that I was for 8 months. But anyway, Madam Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity. My question is to the Minister for Lands, Planning and Environment. Minister, you have said that, quote, our onshore petroleum industry is well regulated under a range of laws to ensure it occurs safely and in line with community expectations. Our regulatory systems and processes are informed by the best available science, and the Beetaloo has been subject to extensive environmental and scientific studies, end quote. Minister, we know your Territory Coordinated Consultation paper talks about sidestepping environmental protection laws to push through projects. Will you give a guarantee to Territorians, Minister, that you will not remove the important environmental protections the former Territory Labor government put in place to ensure strict regulation of the onshore gas industry?
Minister for Lands, Planning and Environment.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I thank the member for her question. The opposition leader. As I said before, Madam Speaker, there is a huge range of rules and regulations that are in place here in the Northern Territory to protect our environment. There are over 800 rules and regulations that are in place as it relates to gas extraction here in the Northern Territory. We know there has been a huge amount of work that has been done to ensure that this activity can happen and can occur safely. We know that there has been a huge amount of work that has been funded with the federal government. The SREBA, the Strategic Regional and Environment Baseline Assessment, is something that was set up to ensure that gas extraction could occur safely in the Beetaloo. We currently have federal scientists that are once again looking at that body of work that has been done to ensure that gas can be extracted safely from the Beetaloo in a safe way. And before I was interrupted earlier, Madam Speaker, I was talking about the levels of scrutiny that go into some of these proponents when they want to extract gas. Because this is what we're talking about here. We know those opposite, when they were in government, talked big on gas, but they never delivered. Half of them didn't want it at all, and half of them did. You had the Chief Minister, the former Chief Minister, that was running ahead saying we support gas, and then you had the Deputy Chief Minister, Madam Speaker, that didn't want it to happen. Here on this side of the chamber, we support industry, and we want to see it happen in a sustainable manner. That is why you have to go through all these rules and regulations. You have to ensure there is an ILUA in place. You have to ensure that you have done your environmental management plan. You have to make sure that you've got a gas well extraction licence. You have to work with ARPA, and I want to thank Dr Benedict Scambray, I want to say that right, Madam Speaker, who I met with recently. Again, an important organisation. You have to have compliance with the code. I recently met with Dr Vogel from the Northern Territory Environment Protection Agency.
Minister, please take your seat. What's your point of order, Opposition Leader?
110 relevance, Madam Speaker. The question was clearly around the environmental protections, and will you ensure to Territorians that you'll keep them, Minister?
I think his response is entirely
he's giving me a big
relevant,
story
and
about
he
who's been
still has
talking
50 seconds to go. Minister, you have the call.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And as I was saying, the Northern Territory EPA, an organisation that oversees this environmental regulation, that if they believe there is an environmental management plan that is put forward that they think does not meet the standards, they have the authority to bring that in, to add additional conditions that come before me as the Environment Minister, and we can look at ensuring that there are additional conditions put in place. This is what the work that occurs, Madam Speaker, to ensure.
Take your seat, Minister. What is the point of order?
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Daly?
110 relevance. The question was really direct.
We
It was
know what the
around, will you
question
give
is.
guarantee that you will not remove
your seat,
important
Member for
environmental
Daly.
protections?
The Minister is answering the question.
Thank you,
Please
Madam Speaker.
continue.
As I am saying loudly and clearly, there is a range of environmental protections that are in place to ensure that industry can operate in the Northern Territory safely. We will ensure that these are in place into the future and that there is a structured environmental protection policy in place going forward. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Fong Lim.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for International Education, Migration and Population. The new CLP government is the first in the Territory's history to create a Ministry for International Education, Migration and Population. These areas are key sectors and subjects to address if we are to attract skilled workers and new residents to the Territory and assist our businesses to grow and prosper. Can you please update the House on why this ministry has been created and how it will contribute to our CLP plan to rebuild the economy?
Minister for International Education, Migration and Population.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member Fong Lim for your question. Our government is proud to be the first government in the Territory's history to establish this incredibly important portfolio of international education, migration and population. Anyone who lives in the Territory will know and understand just how important migrants have been to building our Territory's population and our economy. Our Chief Minister herself, the grandchild of Italian migrants, has stated on a number of times that for our Territory to grow and prosper, not only should our doors remain open to migration, we should actively be encouraging migrants to look to the Territory as the preferred place to call home. Including international education in this portfolio sends a very clear message to prospective students that we want them to stay here and make the Territory their home. That's why we're working hard with CDU to ensure the federal government understands just how critical international students have become, not only in the tertiary education space, but also in the vocational education training or VET space, so that our future growth and prosperity of the Territory can be assured. Our government is committed to helping our businesses fill workforce shortages and increase access to services for Territorians. We will leverage our close proximity to our connection to Asia and advocate for effective and tailored migration solutions, Madam Speaker, to boost the workforce and population for the Territory. Migration programs like the NT Designated Area Migration Agreement, or NT-DAMA as it's more colloquially known, provide NT employers with greater access to overseas skilled workers. And it makes it easier for skilled workers to move and stay in the Northern Territory. Through the program, Northern Territory employers can sponsor workers in occupations that are specifically in demand here in the NT and access concessions to some of the standard criteria, including English levels, age limit and salary threshold. With the new agreement currently being negotiated, it is anticipated that we will see this as a greater priority for the government to reduce the stress and the need for higher numbers and broader parameters in the agreement at the federal level, so that our NT businesses will have greater access to experienced overseas workers to help upskill local apprentices and trainees and grow their businesses. New overseas workers and their families will add to our diverse and well-integrated Territory population, which will help rebuild our economy. And with a number of frontline workers such as nurses, aged care workers, teachers and childcare workers in the occupations list, Territory will have greater access to services helping to restore our lifestyle.
Member for Karama.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Major Events. Minister, the former Labor government announced in May that Darwin would be hosting the Motocross GP from 2025 to 2029. Such an event provides an excellent stepping stone for Territorians looking to join the World MotoGP, like local boy Joel Kelso, whose mother Niall lives in Karama. In a press release in May, the former ALP government highlighted the allocation of $1.65 million to build a permanent motocross track at Hidden Valley. Minister, could you please update the House how the CLP government is working to successfully stage the event and any challenges you've identified with the construction of the track at Hidden Valley?
Minister for Major Events.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Member for Karama, for the question. I didn't realise that you had a constituent that was closely related to this. Madam Speaker, here we have yet another example of the financial mismanagement that the previous Labor government has left us to fix. In our short time in government, we've been handed a series of costly, unfinished projects, signed off before undertaking the necessary due diligence or financial scrutiny. A prime example of this is the recently announced Motocross World Championships, or the MXGP, a project initiated by Labor with a rushed and flawed business case for an event that is to occur in less than 12 months' time. For the last 8 years, the Labor government has loved a headline announcing exciting big projects to grab the Territory's attention. But behind the glossy announcements, we've uncovered a mess. They signed up to a large-scale, costly events like this one without doing the work necessary to ensure these commitments were properly costed or financially viable. In February this year, before the motocross event was announced, Labor signed off on the cost of building their racetrack. Members for Gwadja and Arnhem were part of that disastrous and financially reckless cabinet. They may not like the truth, Madam Speaker, but they were part of that cabinet that signed off that deal. 8 months later, we find that the cost has ballooned now 5 times more than the original estimate. This is without contingencies, with less than a year to go and still no track construction underway, and with a wet season in between. The sad reality is that the cost to pull out of this project now would outweigh the cost to see it through. The additional unbudgeted funds the CLP needs to see this event through could have been assigned to provide more police, teachers or nurses on the ground. Let me be clear, Madam Speaker. there is no doubt the MXGP event will bring benefits to the Territory. It will be a great opportunity for our Territory, for the sporting community, for spectators and drawing interstate and international visitors to our town. But this is just another case of Labor unable to properly plan for and deliver projects with due diligence. The first MXGP event is scheduled for September 2025, and that's a tight time frame to complete all the necessary works and approvals. Track construction is essential for the event to proceed, and failure to deliver on time will result in further financial losses for the Territory. Yet another burden inherited from Labor's reckless governance. Madam Speaker, we are committed to making this work because we recognise the long-term benefits for our local economy and the lifestyle boost for all motocross supporters out there.
Member for Mulca.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The question is to the Minister for Corrections. Minister, it is very hot at the moment, which can cause physical and mental health issues. How many cells in the Northern Territory jails are currently air-conditioned? How many prisoners are housed in cells that have air conditioning? And how many of these cells in the old Berrima Jail and Dondale prisons facilities will have air conditioning for adults and the future? Thank you.
Minister for Corrections.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Look, this is a classic example how Labor have failed us right across the Northern Territory. They have caused a corrections crisis, no matter where you are, whether you're in Alice Springs or Darwin. For 8 years, Madam Speaker, the prison system has got worse and worse, and the Labor government chose to ignore it. They saw the warning signs of what's going on with the overcrowding, and they did nothing. They've put us in a huge mess, a terrible mess, and ultimately the CLP has to fix it. And, Madam Speaker, the CLP are spending taxpayers' money. This is not money that we make, this is taxpayers' money, and we need to spend it wisely because Labor, on the other side, spent it very, very unwisely. They wasted money left, right and centre. In fact, they put us in debt from about $1.9 billion up to about $12 billion in a very short period of time.
Take your seat, please, Minister. What's your point of order, Member for Daly?
Point of order 110 relevance. I note it's been a minute in and the question was around air conditioning for prisoners. He hasn't mentioned that. He's talking about debt.
Thank you, Member for Daly. He's 1 minute into his answer. He's got 2 minutes to go. Minister, you've got the call.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Look, this side of the chamber here, in just 8 short weeks, we've come up with a master plan to deal with the corrections crisis right across the Northern Territory. We are going to build a plan which is going to have an additional 1,000 beds for prisoners right across the Northern Territory, Madam Speaker. And that is because the Labor government failed to do that. In short, 8 weeks we have. And part of that plan, Madam Speaker, is to look at the health and wellbeing of all the prisoners and offer rehabilitation and training. Rehabilitation training is key here, Madam Speaker, because we need to break the cycle of reoffending that the Labor government have just let run rampant right across the Northern Territory. Madam Speaker, I understand that air conditioning is part of our plan in relation to facilitating the prisoners, but right now, Madam Speaker, we need beds. The Labor government dropped the ball and there is just simply not enough space. So, Madam Speaker, the plan is in place, but we need to put prisoners into a bed, and that overweighs the air cons right now because the Labor government has simply failed to...
Point of order, Madam Speaker.
Minister, take your seat. What's your point of order, Member for Gwaja?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Standing Order 110. The member for Mulca asked a direct question about the future and air conditioning in Territory prisons. The former Labor government did the study and was moving to aircon prisons. Will the CLP provide air conditioning?
This is not your opportunity to give a speech. The minister has touched on air conditioning and he has answered the question. It may not be to your satisfaction, but he has been answering the question. Stop arguing. Minister, you've got the call.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Look, in the current Dondale there are some rooms with air conditioning, and also the women's sections in both the prisons have got air conditioning. So there is a plan to deal with this matter, but like I said, Madam Speaker, where I was trying to get to, we need to make sure that the mess caused by the Labor is fixed because we want to keep the Territory safe. And we need to make sure that the police can do their job and free up their watch houses. Because of the failures of the Labor government, the watch houses are full, the prisons are overcrowding because they had some plan not to do anything. They just thought it'll go away, we won't fix it, we won't look at it, put the problem away and just ignore it. What we are doing, we are fixing that.
If this is about relevance, you can sit down now. Okay, what's your point of order, member?
Point of order 46.
What is
it was
point
around,
of order? What is 46?
So there was a direct question about air conditioners in cells.
Please,
Will he
member
take
for
the
Daly.
question
Minister,
as a point of
you've
order?
got the call.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for stopping these irrelevant objections over there, because they know that they have failed Territorians. In relation to air conditioning, the youth facility in Alice Springs has air conditioning. Madam Speaker, we are going to make sure that we fix the crime crisis.
Member for Fanny Bay.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the Minister for Trade, Business and Asian Relations. Minister, during the election, the CLP outlined a plan to rebuild our Territory economy, including through the appointment of a dedicated Minister for Asian Relations. Our CLP government understands the importance of Darwin being recognised as a gateway to Asia for business and trade. Can you update the House on the work being done to rebuild our relationships with our Asian neighbours?
Minister, you have the call.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the member for Fanny Bay for your question. It was a dark day indeed in 2016 when the then Labor Gunner government dropped Asian relations from the trade and business portfolio. That ill-thought-out action saw a 24-year commitment started in 1992 by the then Chief Minister of the Northern Territory, the Honourable Marshall Perrin, to building business and trading relationships with our northern neighbours come to an end, which in no small measure contributed to the deterioration of our Territory economy over the ensuing 8 years. Until that point, Darwin was seen across the country as the gateway to Asia. Governments across Australia knew that if they wanted to do business with our northern neighbours, they had to start that journey here in Darwin, engaging with the Northern Territory government and Northern Territory businesses. In dropping that critical portfolio, the then Labor government sent a very clear message that the Territory no longer considered itself the gateway to Asia. So I am delighted to stand here today and say that wrong has been righted. The placing of Asian relations back onto the Territory's economic agenda with the creation of the Trade, Business and Asian Relations portfolio sends a very clear message that the Territory is open for business and that we are once again looking to our north. The critical work to re-establish Darwin and the Northern Territory as Australia's gateway to Asia has already commenced. The first steps have been to commence discussions with local businesses to assess their appetite to grow their business into Asian areas and to enter partnerships with our Asian neighbours in-country. Groups such as the NT Cattlemen's Association, the Australian-Indonesia Business Council have similarly welcomed our government's commitment, and meetings have already been held with representatives from Indonesia, Taiwan and Vietnam. Madam Speaker, there are tremendous opportunities for the Northern Territory to diversify existing trade linkages for mutual benefit and economic development with our near neighbours. The Territory's growing sectors such as agribusiness, mining and energy, including critical minerals, higher education and competency-based vocational education present fabulous opportunities for partnerships with neighbours such as China, Taiwan, Indonesia and Timor-Leste. Darwin is the only Australian city geographically located within Asia, and I am truly excited, Madam Speaker, about where we can take things, and am buoyed at the welcome the restoration of this portfolio has received.
Member for Nightcliff.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have a question for the Minister for Corrections. Minister, the children that have been visiting us in Parliament over the last couple of days from Allua and Essington have been 10 and 11 years old. I hope the irony of this is not lost on you, considering your bill. When the age of criminal responsibility was previously 10, there were 10-year-olds in custody. That's a fact. Minister, can you guarantee us that not a single 10 or 11-year-old will end up in detention under your changes?
Minister for Corrections.
Thank you, Member for Nightcliff. Madam. Look, this is about corrections is a very important part about our community, Madam Speaker, and we need to make sure that there is going to be a consequence for your crime, because the CLP came to the election with a plan to keep the territory safe. And what we want to do is make sure that we send a message to criminals that if you commit a crime, there's going to be a consequence. So, Madam Speaker, what the problem here is in relation to these youth offenders is they've been deserted by their communities and by their families right across the Northern Territory. Madam Speaker, we're not talking about children who have had a fight with their parents over a bag of lollies. We're talking about children and young offenders who have committed very serious offences on repeated occasions. So what we want to do, Madam Speaker, is we want to make sure those children have access to rehabilitation and support programs that wrap around them to be able to make them have better choices in life. Madam Speaker, because we know that the Labor government failed the correction system because we're in a crisis in relation to the crisis. We are overcrowded, flowing into our watch houses, which causes more ongoing problems, Madam Speaker, because the police have to arrest people because they do a crime and there's nowhere to take them because the Labor government dropped the ball. We want to make sure, Madam Speaker, that all prisoners, whether you're a youth offender or an adult offender, have access to rehabilitation and training programs, Madam Speaker, because we do also know that under the Labor government, 75% of people who are in jail go back to jail. So we want to break that cycle of reoffending, Madam Speaker, and you cannot break the cycle of reoffending when we're in the middle of a corrections crisis.
Minister, take a seat. Member for Nightcliff, what's your point of order?
Point of order, Standing Order 110, please. It's just a simple answer. Can you guarantee us that not a single 10 or 11-year-old will end up in detention under your changes?
Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What I can guarantee the Nightcliff is that we are going to support young offenders no matter where you live in the Northern Territory. We are going to offer you services and rehabilitation and life skills that your family, your community do not offer you. We are going to support you to grow up to become better young people. We're going to support you to come and get a job, to be able to have a family, to be able to move into accommodation, maybe even use our home building scheme to build a house. Because we know that without that education, you are not going to be anywhere in life. So we want to make sure that we give these young offenders the skills they need to be able to be better people, the wraparound services which their families haven't given them. Their families have deserted them. I said earlier this week that these children...
Minister, take your seat. Member for Nightcliff, point of order.
Yeah, point of order, Standing Order 110. Just give us an answer. You keep saying they're not going to be locked up. Can you guarantee that no 10 and 11-year-olds will be locked up in detention? Yes or no?
Minister, you have the call.
Madam Speaker, look, we cannot guarantee that a 10 or 11-year-old is not going to commit a crime. And that what we can guarantee there's going to be a consequence if you commit a crime. And those consequences are going to be in the hands of the court. But what we can say is we're going to support these young offenders to become better people and have a good opportunity in life, unlike the Labor government who have failed them.
Member for Blaine, you have the call.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In Blaine, I have a large number...
Silence, please.
I have a large number of gas workers who work at INPEX and Middle Arm, and they are upstanding members of the community. Sorry, my question is to the Minister for Mining. Minister, we know that the development of the Territory's onshore and offshore gas industry is critical to rebuilding the Territory economy. We also know that Labor sat on their hands for years, not willing to make decisions to provide certainty to this critical industry. Now is the time to see industry accelerate its activity for the benefit of the NT and Territorians. Can
Minister,
you please
Member for Blaine, continue.
Can you please update the House about the work of the Barossa Gas Project and how that will contribute to restoring our economy?
Minister for Mining and Energy.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Member for Blaine, for this valuable question, because we know, Member for Blaine, that people in this House are making money out of the gas industry. Their partners are employed in the gas industry. People are making money out of the gas industry, and that's what the gas does to the Northern Territory. The gas industry supports jobs, supports families, and that is crucial to rebuild our economy. Madam Speaker, the Chief Minister is doing the job of keeping the Territory safe. She has brought into legislation which this House has passed to make the Territory a safer place, and now we are also going to focus on rebuilding the economy. We are going to do 2 or 3 things at once, Madam Speaker. Unlike the Labor government, who couldn't do anything at all, we're going to move forward on many fronts, Madam Speaker.
Minister, can you take your seat, please? Opposition Leader, I have listened to your chit-chat for 2 weeks now. Can you leave the chamber for an hour, please? Minister, continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we know that in the Northern Territory, gas is responsible for 88% of our electricity generation. Madam Speaker, I said earlier today 5 very important words, and I'm going to say them again: gas, mining, agriculture, tourism and defence. We are going to support those industries, Madam Speaker, because we know that when you have a strong industry, you have a strong economy. So we really want to make sure that we can move forward. Madam Speaker, we know that Barossa is now 82% complete and remains on track for production in Q3 2025. This will create and sustain hundreds of jobs in the Northern Territory and inject billions of dollars into our local economy and into the Australian economy. Madam Speaker, we also know that Santos is moving forward developing the carbon capture and storage facilities and program in its. And we also support that because we want to make sure the Territory is a safe place to live and the environment is protected. It's really important that we put these projects together and move forward as one because the environment is perfect, is important, and also is jobs. Madam Speaker, on this side of the chamber, we cut red tape, not corners. We cut red tape, not corners. We want to make sure that the environment is protected, but we also want to make sure that people can make some money and the economy can move forward as we go. Madam Speaker, the Barossa gas field contains approximately 5.1 trillion feet of gas and will replace the Bayu 1 dam field that's currently supplying the Darwin LNG export facility. Gas is going to play an important part in that firming up electricity as we move to renewables. We know that renewables at this stage is unreliable, intermittent, but the gas is going to firm it, and we support the gas industry. And Madam Speaker, what I can say is the Department of Mining is going to be the Department of Mining, not the Department of No Mining. We're going to make sure that we support the industry and move forward because Labor didn't. And we know that the Labor government don't support gas. The party and their wing had a big fight or whatever they did, and they actually cancelled one of their central councils because they didn't want the criticism.
Member for Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the Minister for Corrections. Minister for Corrections, I've been contacted by the Anglican minister in Alice Springs, Kristen Slack, who's very concerned about the removal of children from Alice Springs to Darwin. He's asked me to ask you what specific programs will you put in place for these children and young people? What rehabilitation programs will there be? What diversion programs will there be? He has said, can we please have direct answers and facts? I don't want to hear speeches. I want to hear information. I want to know that if these children are being taken away from their existing supports and community, that the government has a clear plan in place to make sure that they are cared for. Thank you.
Minister for Corrections.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We do have a plan in place. We're going to move the children to a brand new purpose-built facility. Like I said earlier this week, I know that there's some reports in the media that these children are going to move into the old Don Dale, and that is not correct. The young offenders are going to be moved into a brand new purpose-built facility which is going to offer them rehabilitation, training and support to make them become better people. When they grow up, they can make better choices in life to be able to come out job ready. They're going to have skills to be able to go and get a job. And, Madam Speaker, they're going to learn through the rehabilitation programs that they have made some wrong choices and that there is ample opportunity and support for them to make the right choices as they move forward. So the programs that are currently in place, Madam Speaker, aren't going to be changed. We're reviewing some of them, but we want to make sure we move forward to give these children the best opportunity in life. And it'll in fact make it more beneficial for these young offenders because they're going to be in a centralised location to offer more services and more wraparound services to actually give them better support than they have at the moment. So we can ensure that these young children have the best opportunity to better themselves as they become adults and move through. Because what we don't want to do, which is what the Labor government allowed to happen, is for these children just to go through the revolving door and end up in the adult prison. We want to give them all the opportunity, and we'll offer them as many programs as we possibly can. We know that the Back on Track program has been renewed. We know that the youth program is on track. There's the Palmerston Drop-In Centre. We are going to make sure that there's a whole range of this bush. I'll read through a couple. There's the Bush Fit Mob, East Arnhem Regional Council, Kalano, Tennant Creek Mob, McDonnell Rangers. There's some of these programs that are out there, these service providers, I should say, which offer services. We're going to continue to support them because we know that these young children need the support that the Labor government failed to give them.
Member for Fong Lim.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is for the Chief Minister. Chief Minister, this Monday, 28th October at 9 a.m, I note the Under-Treasurer will be giving a public presentation on the Territory's economic outlook. Chief Minister, why is this presentation so important?
Chief Minister.
Thank you very much, Member for Fong Lim, and an exceptional question. I know the economy is close to your heart and is obviously an area of expertise for you, but the economy is important to everyone. And what we've had over 8 long years of Labor is no public discourse about the Territory's economy. And in fact, even worse than that, what we've had is a Labor government walk away from the Territory's natural strengths, walk away from our economic and strategic advantages, and try and shape the Territory into something she isn't. Try and pretend that the Territory's strengths aren't what they are, and try and move us to be something that we're not. I've said it 1,000 times, Member for Fong Lim, and I know you've heard me say this. We teach our children to be true to themselves. And yet Labor tried to teach Territorians to be ashamed of who the Territory is. Now, we know we have a strong resources sector. We know that gas is a natural advantage to us, our mineral and rare earth resource, our strategic proximity to Asia, our defence strategic importance, our tourism opportunities and our pristine environment, our cultural heritage. We have an agriculture with our vast arable land, our cattle industry, just to name a few, Madam Speaker. This is what the Territory is known for and should be celebrated for, and that is why Tim McManus, the Under-Treasurer, will be doing a public presentation on our economy at 9 a.m. down at the Convention Centre on Monday, and I encourage everyone to attend. This is about making sure that everyday Territorians understand where the economy is at right now and where it needs to go into the future. We've just had the Treasurer's annual financial statement tabled in this Parliament. It shows that net debt has hit $9 billion. It shows our fiscal balance deficit is at $1.2 billion. And these are very big headwinds for the Territory. This is significant challenges that the CLP now has to overcome. And for us to overcome those challenges, we will have to be brave and bold and do things differently. And I'm encouraged by the fact we have a mandate from the people to do things differently. They do not want status quo from a CLP government. They want change, and they want to see it happen fast. So the Under-Treasurer's presentation will be the start of an important conversation we have to have with Territorians about our future, because we know to rebuild the Territory, we have to do it together, which means everyday Territorians have to have an understanding of where we are and where we're going into the future. And I'm proud to be delivering that public presentation for all Territorians.
Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that any further questions be placed on the written notice paper.